I was grabbing coffee with an old college friend last week, and he had his laptop open to what looked like a professional Bloomberg terminal. He was talking fast, leaning over a series of flickering green and red candles, muttering about hedging event risk and liquidity pools. He had this intense, focused energy you usually only see on a high-stakes trading floor. "I'm moving into a heavy position on the Sunday volatility," he told me, eyes fixed on a graph. He looked like a man managing a sophisticated hedge fund. He started explaining how he was diversifying his portfolio against unexpected environmental shifts. I leaned in, expecting to see oil futures or maybe some obscure tech stock. Instead, I saw a picture of a snowy football field in Buffalo and a ticker asking if it would snow more than 4 inches before kickoff. He wasn't trading in any traditional sense. He was betting on the weather to decide the outcome of a parlay. When I jokingly asked if he'd just become a degenerate gambler, he looked genuinely offended. He straightened his shirt and said, "This isn't a sports book. It's a prediction market. It's federally regulated financial commerce." To him, those charts and the academic terminology were the ironclad proof that he was a sophisticated investor, not just another guy chasing a rush. But then the atmosphere shifted. I mentioned a news alert I'd just seen about a Superior Court judge in Massachusetts. I told him a preliminary injunction had just been issued, essentially calling his market an illegal gambling operation and ordering it to stop taking action on sports. The change in his demeanor was instantaneous. The sophisticated investor persona vanished, replaced by a flash of genuine panic. He didn't argue the economic merits or the science of the market anymore. He started scrolling frantically, cursing under his breath about state overreach and the NFL's lobbyists. He went from defending the integrity of a new financial frontier to sounding like a man who was worried the cops were about to raid his local bookie. That total disconnect, the way he dressed up a simple wager in the language of Wall Street until the moment the law caught up to him, is exactly where the biggest fight in the American economy is happening right now. It's a collision between the old-school gambling giants who play by the rules and a new wave of disruptors who claim they aren't gambling at all, even as they take hundreds of millions of dollars on the NFL. Is this the future of finance, or just a very clever way to build a casino where the house always wins by pretending it isn't a house?
And the answer, frankly, it just completely depends on who you ask, or maybe more importantly, which regulator you ask.
That is exactly what we're here to figure out. We have a massive stack of sources today.
A huge pile.
We're looking at legal briefs from the NCAA. We've got these super technical papers on market microstructure, which, believe me, we are going to get into, and some really fascinating data on AI trading.
So this is the big one. Yeah.
We're dissecting the battle between these prediction markets, platforms like Kalshi and Polymarket, and the traditional establishment.
Meaning the NFL, the NCAA, state regulators, the old guard. And we really have to be clear about what's at stake here. I mean, this isn't just about whether you can put a few bucks on the Chiefs game on Sunday.
No.
This is a fundamental battle over the definition of truth and value in the American economy.
How do you mean?
Well, is placing money on an outcome gambling, which we've, traditionally viewed as a vice to be managed, or is it derivatives trading, which is seen as this sophisticated financial tool?
Right, because that distinction is everything. If it's trading, it belongs to the federal government, to the CFTC. If it's gambling, it belongs to the states. And looking at my friend in that coffee shop, my first instinct was, come on, you're just deluding yourself. But then when you start digging into these sources, you realize there's a massive philosophical divide here.
Yes, we are looking at a legal and philosophical tug of war between the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the CFTC, and state laws. And beneath that, you've got this bigger question. Is the wisdom of the crowd, backed by cold, hard cash, a better predictor of reality than all the experts, the polls, the traditional bookies?
Yes, because I think to really understand why this is such a powder keg, we have to look at the people who are actually using these platforms, the actual users. Yeah. It's funny, this whole debate reminds me of something I was reading about. It was this amateur statistician out in Ohio. Let's just call him Dave.
Okay, Dave in Ohio.
And Dave's story, I think it kind of perfectly captures this whole psychological shift we're talking about. He found himself caught right in the middle of these two worlds.
Okay, so paint the picture for me. What's Dave's deal?
So Dave is a lifelong college football fan. He knows the stats inside and out, knows the players, the coaches.
He's deep in the weeds.
But he started getting incredibly frustrated with the local state-regulated sports books. You know, the ones, the apps on your phone with the flashy celebrity endorsements and all that.
Sure, the ones plastered with risk-free bet banners and, the responsible gaming warnings everywhere.
Exactly. And Dave felt like the odds were opaque. He felt like the house was just skimming way too much off the top. To him, it felt predatory.
Which is a common feeling. That negative 110 juice adds up.
So he switched to a prediction market. And the way he described it was absolutely fascinating. He said he stopped treating his passion like a vice that the state needed to manage or, protect him from.
Okay. So what did he see it as instead?
He started treating his knowledge as data, as an asset to be traded.
That's a really significant psychological shift, isn't it?
It's a huge shift. He described the feeling as, and this is a quote, finally being allowed to speak the truth in a room full of whispers.
Wow.
To him, the CFTC stepping in with federal oversight wasn't a restriction, it was a validation. It was the government, in his eyes, saying, you are not a degenerate gambler, you are a market participant, you are an intellectual.
Telling, it reframes the entire activity.
Yeah. Is that just ego? Is it just a fancier way to feel better about losing money on a football game?
But the feeling is real?
Well, yeah. And listening to Dave, I felt this sense of clarity about the core argument. There was something profoundly,
dignifying about an institution that prioritizes market efficiency and raw data over this fragmented, moralizing bureaucracy you get from state-level gambling commissions.
It's a different philosophy of regulation.
It suggests that when we stop trying to protect people from their own choices and instead just provide a transparent framework for those choices, we actually get a higher level of institutional efficacy.
But, does that actually hold up legally?
Well, that sentiment, that feeling of validation that Dave in Ohio has, it's absolutely crucial to the legal argument.
So,
what that statistician is reacting to is the fundamental difference between a protectionist model and what you could call a market integrity model.
protection versus integrity.
Exactly. And our sources, specifically the documents from Pay News and the legal analysis from Steptoe, they just really highlight this conflict perfectly. So on one side, you have the states. We mentioned Massachusetts in the intro. You've got Judge Christopher Berry Smith there issuing an injunction against Kalshi. What was his specific beef?
His ruling was so fascinating because he didn't just look at the letter of the law, he looked at the intent. He essentially called out their entire business model.
Okay.
He said Kalshi knew its model conflicted with state enforcement regimes and this is the key part, chose to take that risk head on.
So he's saying they knew they were breaking the rules and did it anyway.
Yes. For them, this is all about consumer protection, addiction prevention, and, let's be honest, tax revenue.
Right. Tax revenue. Let's not forget that's a huge part of this.
Absolutely. The states view gaming as an entertainment product. It's a luxury good, kind of like alcohol or tobacco, that needs heavy guardrails and, heavy taxation.
But then you look at the federal level, specifically the CFTC, and there's this petition from a group called Aristotle in our sources that just lays out a completely different worldview.
A totally different universe.
They argue that these markets aren't gaming at all. Why? Because they serve an economic purpose.
And this is the absolute core of the legal argument. The CFTC's mandate, their whole reason for being, is to prevent market manipulation and ensure market integrity.
They're not the morality police.
Exactly. They don't typically police vice. Their job is to make sure that the price of a commodity, or in this case a contract, is real and not rigged. The Aristotle petition argues that prediction markets create price discovery. They allow for hedging.
Okay. Hedging, that's the magic word my friend in the coffee shop kept using. I'm hedging my portfolio. But come on, is a guy betting $50 on the Buffalo Bills really hedging? It just feels like a convenient, smart-sounding excuse to gamble.
For the average retail user, you're right, often, yes, it's speculation. But the structure of the market allows for legitimate hedging in a way a casino or a sportsbook just doesn't.
Okay, give me an example. Make it real.
Think about a business owner in a college town, let's say Athens, Georgia.
Okay, home of the Bulldogs. Go Dogs.
Right. And this business owner, she runs a bar right near campus. Her revenue might depend very heavily on whether the Bulldogs win their big game on Saturday.
Right. If they win, the town goes crazy. Everyone's out celebrating.
Exactly. People stay out late. They buy rounds of shots. Merchandise flies off the shelf. But if they lose, the town is depressed. Everyone goes home early. Her sales plummet.
So the bar owner has a massive real-world financial exposure to the outcome of a football game.
Now, In a traditional sports book, she could bet on the other team to win, sure, but the betting limits are probably low, the fee is high, and the sports book might even ban her if she wins too much.
Right, they don't like sharp bettors.
They don't. A prediction market, on the other hand, allows her to buy contracts that pay out if the Bulldogs lose. She is offsetting her real-world business risk. If the team loses, her bar suffers, but her bet pays out, covering her losses.
That is a valid economic function. It's risk transfer. That's what derivatives are for.
Exactly. It's a textbook example of hedging.
Okay, that makes sense for the bar owner. But the casinos, the traditional gambling industry, they are not buying that argument at all, are they?
They look at this and see a duck that walks like a duck and quacks like a duck.
And they are screaming duck at the top of their lungs.
Very, very loudly. We have statements here from the American Gaming Association, the AGA. And their chairman, Bill Miller, he did not mince words at all.
Okay.
He called these platforms backdoor gambling schemes disguised as financial products.
Backdoor gambling, that sounds so illicit. Like a speakeasy or something.
And it really reflects their fear. The AGA points out that the U.S. has spent, 7 years now since the Supreme Court repeal of PESPay in 2018, building this highly regulated state-by-state sports betting market.
Right, with all the rules. Age verification, know your customer, responsible gaming taxes, geofencing to make sure you're in the right state.
All of that infrastructure. And their argument is that these prediction markets are using a federal loophole to just bypass all those state-level consumer protections.
It's the classic Uber strategy, right? Yeah. Move fast, break things, and then argue that the old laws don't apply to you because you're not a taxi service, you're a tech platform.
And Kalshi has had some really significant wins using exactly that strategy. They won a big case in the D.C. Circuit Court. They've successfully pushed back against regulators in New Jersey and Nevada.
And their logic is what?
Their logic is, if this is a derivative contract regulated by the CFTC, then state gambling commissions literally do not have jurisdiction. It's a matter of federal supremacy. The federal law trumps the state law.
So if I'll get this straight. If I'm trading, not betting, on whether the Bengals win, and I'm doing it on a CFTC-regulated exchange, the Frito Ohio effectively can't tell me that I'm gambling.
That is the legal position Kalshi is taking. Yeah. And it absolutely terrifies the establishment because it effectively creates a national market that completely bypasses the fractured state-by-state system that they've spent years building.
It's a bold move, a really bold move. But is it just a clever legal loophole? Or is there actually something, technically superior about these markets? Because that friend of mine and Dave in Ohio, they seem to believe that this wasn't just legally different, but that it was structurally better.
And that brings us to the mechanics of how these things actually work. And this is where it gets really, really interesting, specifically when you look at the data and the efficiency.
Right. And, this connects to another perspective I came across during the research for this. I saw this thread online from a high-frequency trader, a real Wall Street guy, he used to work at equities, who recently pivoted his whole operation to platforms like Kalshi and Polymarket.
Interesting.
And his take was jarring because it was so cold, so detached.
Well,
he wasn't talking about the thrill of the win or the glory of the game. He wasn't posting pictures of a big winning parlay ticket.
No emotional investment.
None. Instead, he was posting screenshots of massive transaction volumes and these predictive curves showing how these markets performed compared to traditional polls or betting lines. He called them truth machines.
Truth machines. That's a power.
He viewed them as physical evidence of a mechanism that is just, superior to anything the traditional sports betting industry has ever produced. He was arguing that while state regulators are busy debating consumer protection metrics and social safeguards, these markets are busy just being right.
The output speaks for itself, is what he's saying.
Exactly. And I found myself just mesmerized by the hard data he was showing. It's such a cold, hard contrast to the soft metrics of traditional regulation. And it makes me wonder if our obsession with procedural safety, are you 21, are you within state lines, is actually just a veil for deep inefficiency.
That's a provocative question.
If a market can predict an outcome with surgical precision, isn't that the ultimate form of consumer protection? It provides the truth, which seems far more valuable than a government-mandated warning label on an app.
That phrase, truth machines, it aligns perfectly with the academic research we have. Specifically this one thesis, the Altodoc thesis, in our source stack.
Okay.
It argues that there is a fundamental difference in the engine driving these markets compared to what's driving a traditional sports book.
Okay, let's pop the hood then. Because to me, an app is an app. I press a button, I put my money down, what is actually different underneath?
It's the difference between something called an automated market maker, or an AMM, and a continuous double auction, a CDA.
Okay, alphabet soup. Let's start with the traditional sports book. What are they using?
Okay, so think of a traditional sports book, or even some of the earlier crypto betting sites, as a vending machine.
A vending machine. Yeah.
The price is set by the owner of the machine, the house, or an algorithm that's controlled by the house. You walk up to it, you see the price is $1.10 for a bag of chips. You put your money in, you get your chips. The price is rigid.
And the house includes a huge margin for itself.
A massive margin. That's the VIG, or the juice. They build it in to ensure they make money no matter what you buy, no matter what happens in the game.
Right. That's the famous negative 110 odds we always see. I have to bet $110 just to win 100. That extra $10 is the vending machine owner's fee.
Exactly. That's the vending machine model. It's convenient, but it's expensive, and the price doesn't always reflect reality. It just reflects what the house wants to sell it for.
Okay. So that's the AMM model. How is Kalshi, the CDA model, different?
Kalshi operates like the New York Stock Exchange. That's a continuous double auction. And specifically, they use what's called a central limit order book, or a CLAO.
CO. Sounds kind of messy.
It's actually the opposite. It's incredibly clean and transparent. In this model, there is no house setting the price. There is just a list of people wanting to buy and a list of people wanting to sell, an order book.
So it's more like peer-to-peer.
Yes. If you want to buy a contract that says the Chiefs win at 60 cents, you need someone else, another human or a trading firm, to be willing to sell you that contract at 60 cents. The exchange just plays matchmaker.
So if I think the real price should be 55 cents, I can just put an order in at that price and wait for a seller.
And this simple mechanism leads to what economists call thick markets. When you have high liquidity, that's lots and lots of buyers and sellers all competing, the price discovery becomes incredibly efficient.
And the Altodoc thesis points to some specific features Kalshi uses to help this, right?
Yes, it highlights the 1-cent tick sizes.
Why does a 1-cent tick size matter? That sounds like such a trivial detail.
In a traditional sports book, the spread between the buy and sell price might be huge. The implied probability might jump from 50% to 55%. That's a 5% gap where you just lose value. That's the house's cut.
Right.
On Kalshi, the price can move from 50 cents to 51 cents. That granular precision means the cost of making a trade is tiny. And that, in turn, attracts institutional capital.
Institutional capital, you mean the big boys.
Yeah.
The hedge funds and professional traders.
Yes. Big market-making firms like Susquehanna. These aren't guys betting $50 on the weekend. These are firms that are algorithmically moving millions of dollars constantly. When they enter a market, they remove that thin market problem where the spreads are too wide to be useful. They tighten everything up.
And that makes the price, or the probability that the price represents, more accurate.
The thesis cites data from a 2022 study by Clay, and it shows that Kalshi's prices are tightly clustered around the line of perfect calibration.
Okay, what does perfect calibration mean in plain English?
It means that if a contract is priced at 70 cents, the event actually happens 70% of the time. If it's priced at 30 cents, it happens 30% of the time. It's remarkably, almost spookily accurate.
So the price isn't just a betting line that a bookie made up. It's a signal. It's the aggregated intelligence of literally everyone putting their money where their mouth is.
It's what's called a wealth-weighted signal. It's not one person, one vote. And it aggregates all the public information out there, news, weather, injury reports, rumors, into a single elegant number.
A price.
A price. And here's where that truth machine concept from your trader friend really gets its validation. We have a paper from ArcSiv about artificial intelligence.
Right, the AI angle. I definitely wanted to ask about this. This is about the Remax model, right?
Yes. The researchers took data from Polymarket, which is another one of these platforms, and they trained an AI specifically to forecast event outcomes. And the results were just stunning. In a simulation, on a test set of data it had never seen before, this AI achieved a profit of $52.
Okay, I have to be the skeptic again. $52.
Yeah.
That's dinner for two. That's not exactly retire to the Caribbean money. Why should we care about $52?
Context is everything here. It wasn't about the raw dollar amount. It achieved a 10% return on investment, a 10% ROI.
Okay, in financial markets, a consistent 10% edge is basically the holy grail.
It's what every hedge fund manager on the planet is trying to find. The AI outperformed OpenAI's own O1 model. But what's really fascinating, and I think the most important part, is where it won.
Where did it find its edge?
It beat the human market in the low confidence scenarios, those 40 to 60% probability events where humans are usually just guessing.
The coin flip zone, the murky middle.
Exactly. That is the hardest place to make money. Usually in that 40 to 60% range, the market is just noise. It's people betting on their gut feelings. The AI found the signal hidden in all that noise.
So the AI looked at this fuzzy middle where everyone else was basically just guessing, and it found the truth.
And this, to me, proves that these markets are, to some extent, solvable with data. If an AI can consistently make money, it reinforces the entire argument that these are financial instruments, not just simple games of chance.
Distinction.
You can't train an AI to consistently beat a roulette wheel because roulette is truly random, but you can train it to beat a prediction market because the market isn't random. It reflects an underlying reality.
It validates the skill argument over the luck argument. If these markets are so efficient, so accurate, and potentially so profitable for those with the right tools, why are the big sports leagues running around like the sky is falling? You'd think they would want this level of accuracy and transparency.
Because accuracy and transparency can be very, very threatening to established power structures, especially when those structures rely on their ability to control the narrative.
Which brings us directly to the big dogs, the NFL and the NCAA. You know, I was trying to visualize this from their perspective. Try to imagine a veteran executive within a major American sports organization, say the NCAA. This is someone who has spent decades of their life defending the integrity of the game against what they see as the constant threat of gambling.
Right. It's been their boogeyman for a century.
Exactly. And I read this analysis suggesting that the fierce resistance from the NFL and the NCAA toward these prediction markets isn't actually about stopping corruption. It's about a systemic fear of transparency.
A fear of losing control.
This executive sees a world where these data-driven financial tools are providing a clearer, more honest picture of reality than his own press releases do. And he clings to these moralistic concerns and arguments about procedural integrity because they are the only tools he has left to control the narrative.
It's the only playbook he knows.
And it feels like this classic struggle of Western institutions, right? Prioritizing these old world morals over modern, results-focused financial mechanisms. And I have to say, I look at this conflict and I feel a bit of a sting. I get the instinct to protect the sanctity of sport, but it's hard not to see this resistance as a failure to adapt. By choosing the moral high ground over the data-driven reality, these organizations might be standing in the way of the very transparency they claim to cherish. And it's a reminder that sometimes the most moral outcome is the one that refuses to hide the truth behind a curtain of tradition.
And that tension you're describing is just palpable in the documents we have from the NCAA and the NFL. They are using extremely strong language.
That was the word that NCAA President Charlie Baker used in his letter to the CFTC. He demanded a complete suspension of these markets.
He called them catastrophic risks to student athletes. And honestly, when you dig into the specifics of their fears, you can see why they're sweating. The NCAA is specifically worried about things like transfer portal trading.
Transfer portal trading.
Okay, so imagine a market on where a specific 19-year-old star quarterback is going to transfer next season. Will he go to Ohio State? Will he go to Alabama?
And people will be betting on this.
If the market is allowed to exist, absolutely. And the NCAA argues this creates a direct incentive for harassment. If you have $5,000 riding on a kid deciding to go to Alabama and you can find his Instagram account,
you might slide into his DMs, hey kid, you better go to Bama or else.
Exactly. It creates a direct financial incentive for complete strangers to interfere in the life decisions of a teenager. And you have to admit, that is a legitimate ethical nightmare. They also argue there's a lack of proper age gating compared to the state-regulated sports books.
Yeah, I will admit, that is really creepy concern. But here's the thing that confuses me. We have regulated sports betting now. People are already betting millions on college games. We have scandals happening now. Is banning one specific type of market really going to stop people from harassing athletes online?
And that is the exact irony that's pointed out in the Steptoe source material. They reference a massive point-shaving scheme that was just uncovered in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. It involved 39 athletes and 17 different schools.
39 athletes. That's not one bad apple. That's a huge criminal ring.
It was massive. And critically, that happened under the current regulated environment. The state regulations, the official data partnerships, the integrity monitors, none of that stuff stopped it from happening.
So the argument that state regulation equals safety is, well, it's empirically false in that case, isn't it?
At best, it's very shaky. In fact, you could make the opposite argument. You could argue that a prediction market, with its truth machine efficiency, might actually detect that kind of corruption much faster.
How would that work?
Well, if the price on a seemingly random game moves in a very strange way, let's say a huge favorite suddenly becomes a massive underdog for no publicly known reason, that's a signal. In a prediction market, money talks. If insiders are betting big money against their own team, the price is going to move dramatically.
That's a red flag.
It's a giant screaming red flag. The market signal shouts, something is wrong here, long before an official integrity monitor might catch on.
It's the old sunlight is the best disinfectant theory. The market itself rats out the fixers.
Yes, but the NFL is taking a hard line too. We've got testimony here from Jeff Miller, their executive vice president. He argued that prediction markets lack crucial things like know your customer protocols and official league data requirements.
Official league data. Yeah. I had a feeling we would end up here. Now we're getting to the money.
We always end up at the money. The NFL makes a tremendous amount of revenue selling its official data feeds to sportsbooks. If you run a sportsbook, you generally have to pay the NFL a hefty fee to use their official stats to settle bets. It's a goldmine for them.
And Kalshi doesn't want to pay.
Kalshi and Polymarket argue they don't need official data, they just need public truth. Did the team win the game? No. They can verify that from the TV broadcast or 100 different news reports. They don't need to buy a special feed from the league.
So if Kalshi wins this legal battle, the NFL loses a major revenue stream. They lose their monopoly on the facts of their own games.
So when they talk about integrity, what you also need to hear is intellectual property and commercial control.
And I saw something in the Penn News source that seemed to completely contradict this. Well, the NFL and the NCAA are treating this whole thing like it's the apocalypse.
The NHL is partnering with them.
Yes. The National Hockey League has officially partnered with both Kalshi and Polymarket. They are literally putting their logo on the platform. What gives? Is hockey just, I don't know, cooler about this stuff?
Apps. But their commercial director's argument is incredibly pragmatic. He basically says it's better to be in the room where it happens.
Get a seat at the table.
Right. If they partner with them, they can control which markets are offered. They can have a contract that says, okay, you can offer a market on the final score, but not on which player gets a penalty.
So they can block the creepy markets like the transfer portal stuff by collaborating instead of fighting.
Exactly. The NHL sees it as bringing the activity into the light and shaping it rather than just yelling at it from the outside. Or, as we're now seeing with the big commercial gambling giants, if you can't beat them, buy them.
And that brings us perfectly to part 4 of our roadmap here, the commercial convergence. Because for all the tough talk of illegal gambling coming from the American Gaming Association, the big gambling companies themselves look like they're getting their swimsuits on and getting ready to jump into the pool.
They absolutely are. It's happening right now. Both Front Office Sports and Payne News highlight this strategic pivot. DraftKings went out and acquired a company called Railbird Technologies, and they're now launching DraftKings Prediction.
And so the same companies whose lobbying arm is calling this backdoor gambling are now launching their own prediction markets. That feels incredibly cynical.
It's the classic corporate playbook, isn't it? Demonize the disruptor in public while you're quietly trying to build your own version of their product in private.
Do you see the writing on the wall?
They see the transaction volume on Polymarket. They see the user interest. They know they can't afford to ignore this. FanDuel is doing it too. They're partnering with the CME Group, which is a massive traditional derivatives exchange in Chicago.
So by their actions, they are completely validating Kalshi's entire legal argument. They're admitting these are valid financial products.
Yes, they're voting with their wallets. They realize that this is where the growth is. But there is a catch. It goes right back to that truth machine engine we were talking about before, the liquidity. The Alto Doc thesis emphasizes that these markets have winner-takes-all dynamics.
What?
Prediction markets depend on network effects. Liquidity attracts more liquidity. The more people that are trading on a platform, the better and tighter the prices are, which in turn attracts even more people to trade there.
Right. If I want to trade, I go where the action is. I don't want to go to some ghost town exchange where I can't find a buyer or seller.
Exactly. And this is where Kalshi has a moat, a one.
What's their moat?
Because it is officially designated by the CFTC as a designated contract market, it can service institutional capital. Hedge funds can legally trade on Kalshi.
But they can't trade on DraftKings.
No. A regulated hedge fund isn't going to open a DraftKings account and start betting client money on an app that was designed for recreational gamblers. The regulatory hurdles, the compliance, the counterparty risks are all completely different.
So Kalshi is building a platform for Wall Street, while DraftKings is building one for Main Street.
And this creates a potential divergence in the market. You might see retail betting continue on the traditional sports apps, but institutional event hedging will happen on these federally regulated prediction markets. And the volume on the institutional side could eventually dwarf the retail side.
Which brings us back full circle to that meta signal concept. If these markets get big enough, with enough institutional money flowing through them, they stop being just about sports, don't they?
Yes. The AltaDoc thesis makes a fascinating point that the prices in these markets are orthogonal to traditional asset classes.
Orthogonal. That's a $10 word. What does that mean for us regular people?
It just means they don't move in sync with the stock market. If the S&P 500 crashes tomorrow because of a change in interest rates, the probability of the Kansas City Chiefs winning the Super Bowl doesn't really change. The two events are uncorrelated.
Which, if you're a money manager, makes it the perfect diversification.
Exactly. The holy grail of portfolio management is finding non-correlated assets. You want things that don't all crash at the same time. So suddenly, sports outcomes become a legitimate asset class.
So you're saying in the future, my 401k might have a tiny sliver of global sports event risk in it, right alongside stocks and bonds.
It's entirely possible. Imagine an insurance company in Florida hedging against hurricane payouts by buying contracts on weather markets. Or a hedge fund hedging against the economic impact of a Super Bowl on a local economy by trading on the outcome of the game. We are moving toward a world where everything is priced and everything is tradable.
It's a truly dizzying thought. We've gone from a single guy in a coffee shop looking at a snowy field in Buffalo all the way to the future of global portfolio management.
And that is exactly why this battle is so fierce. It's not just about gambling. It's about the financialization of reality itself.
So let's just recap where we've been on this deep dive. We started with this fundamental clash between the messy, moralistic state regulations and this cold, efficient federal market mechanism.
The protectionist model versus the market integrity model.
Right. Then we saw how the technology itself, this truth machine, is proving to be incredibly accurate and even profitable for AI, with that $52 profit proving a 10% edge in the hardest zones to trade.
A verifiable edge.
We saw the institutional panic from the likes of the NFL and the NCAA, who seemed terrified of losing control over their data and their narratives, even while their own systems struggle with corruption.
And finally, we're seeing the commercial giants, the DraftKings and FanDuels of the world, rushing to catch up before they get left behind. It is a perfect storm of technology, law, and massive amounts of money. And whoever wins this fight is going to define how we interact with information and risk for the next decade.
We spend so much time debating rules and laws and this idea of integrity. But listening to all of this and looking at the data, I'm left with one final thought. We often assume that integrity in sports or in finance comes from strict rules, moral oversight, and a strong hand from the authorities. But looking at the sheer precision of these markets, the way they aggregate millions of quiet whispers into a single screaming price, you have to wonder if we've got it backward. Maybe the only true integrity we have left isn't in the rule book of a league commissioner or the gavel of a judge, but in the brutal, unsparing honesty of a price chart that refuses to lie, no matter who wants it to.